All right. Well, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another webinar on burn morels. And today we are going to talk about the mid to late season burn morels. And we're really going to focus here on the really second half of the season. I think right around the middle of June, we hit the kind of middle of the season and we're kind of on the tail end now. So it's a fun topic, and we're going to have some different strategies and different ideas and different way of looking at burn morel hunting from here on out, which can go all the way into September. There's even a fun account of it happening in Arizona in October, I believe. Maybe we can mention later. Brent's on here; he might know more about that. He's from Arizona. Um, but let's talk about. Let me go to the next slide here. Oh, I should just real quick tell you about Kristen and I. We run Modern Forager and GeoForager. We really those are passion projects, and we do a lot with mapping and blogging, and we really try to do the things we enjoy around mushrooms, and that includes burn morel hunting, which we've been doing going on 10 years now. We chase around to a lot of burns with our dogs and really visit a lot of different states when we can as well, and also go from early in the season to late in the season. So it's a fun hobby. Um, let's see if I can go to that next slide. Now, I gotta tell you, I'll speak for Kristen too. Um, I think we really like the second half of the season more than the first. Generally, people are getting really excited about morels in March and going out early and hunting around, and we'll jump out. It's fun to go out in March and April and May, but we don't seem to really, we seem to do best later in the season. And we enjoy the late season hunt. We enjoy the lack of competition. Often the burns have kind of cleared out by then. People are moving on to other activities. I like Krista's comment. The first half of the season just does feel more desperate too. Like people are into morels, and something switches. And as we get later in the season, all the kind of enthusiasts lose their enthusiasm and go on to other things. So there's just a lot less people in the woods. Um, but at the same time, the quality and the size and the quantity of the mushrooms is awesome. Um, they're big, they're beautiful, they're more fun to pick, they're more fun to carry out of the woods. They weigh more. They're great. We love chasing the late burn morels. Now, I got lots of picks in here. I'm going to try to navigate through some of them. Sometimes we talk about the grand slam, and that's when you go out and you get other cool mushrooms with your burn morels. And certainly out here in the West, the spring porcini is a pretty popular one. But check out this picture. This we went into a burn on August 7th, and in our walk into the burn, we found all of these pretty cool, yummy mushrooms. Um, uh, we have some, and this was in Colorado. So up at the top, some unusual ones: hawk's wings, that clubfoot. What's the club? What's the club species called? I forget. It's kind of a sweet mushroom. It's kind of fun to cook with. We've got, it looks like a hedgehog in the upper right-hand corner and a lactarius in the upper left-hand corner. Over on the right, we've got I think the name changed on this, a black chanterelle or a blue chanterelle. Also, Polyzelus multiplex, I think is the species name on that. In the middle, that is not a spring king in the middle. That is a Boletus rubriceps, a summer Boletus. We got a couple rando chanterelles. And look in the lower right-hand corner. You guys know what that is, right? Pretty cool. We found Matsutake on that same day. So that's one day in the woods, and we were going to this burn where we found a few burn morels. We put in there too, and that was on an August 7th in Colorado. So pretty cool. And that's one of the fun things about hunting later in the season is there's other mushrooms that are coming up that you're going to find that start with the spring porcini here in the West, but there's going to be some others as this picture is evidence of. Um, Let's see. So we do love the late season. Now, in terms of where you're going to go, the early season seems like these places where you're unlikely in the late season, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and the western half of the Cascades are all the places that are first out of our mouths when we're talking about where to hunt in April and May and early June. These tend to be areas that warm up quicker in the spring. They also dry out quicker, and they often have this quick window of mushrooms popping that maybe doesn't last quite as long. And I think that's mostly because of the weather. The West Cascades has diversity of trees that maybe is different, so they also seem to have maybe not as many species of those late morels too. But regardless, we are probably not going to be in any of these places right now. Now, California has some high elevation burns. They definitely could go off and will go off and can offer late season opportunities. Absolutely. So there is a little opportunity there. I think, maybe like 6,000 feet in the Sierras and higher where there's a little bit of burn activity, people do find burn morels. So that's the least unlikely of the unlikelies, or the most likely of the unlikelies. Of course, morels can show up in any of these places in August. Things are weird, but the likely places where we're really going to focus our attentions are going to be the eastern half of the Cascades from the crest east. Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah. These are all places that have higher elevations that tend to hold snow longer, that are just cooler approaching into summer, and thus are going to be the source of great late season hunting. They also all have the mix of trees that some of the late season mushrooms love, and we'll talk about what those are in a minute. That picture there was from June 16th. So that's the kind of turning point of the season, and that was taken in Idaho. Um, and those felt like late season Morels. We were picking through on a second or third flush. We were getting some early grays and some exuberance, and then some later mushrooms of the other types. So it felt like mid to late season in that burn there in Idaho. Okay, let me just look at the notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, did we find those other species in big flushes like morels? That day, the answer was no. Those were all kind of, we only found a few of each of those. And frankly, it was kind of early for all of them. So as the season progressed, the big flushes hadn't come out for any of those yet. All right. Uh, I'm just reading through your questions here. Does eastern Colorado fall under the Eastern Cascades? Yes, it does. However, there's a lot of eastern Colorado that I think struggles with getting the elevation that you need to take you later into the season. But yes, eastern Colorado fits into that as well. Um, okay, so I went backwards there. Let me go forward. So we're going to talk about some of the species. I marked out the first three bird morel species. Let's not talk about them much. They're the, kind of early half of the season for the most part. Then I want to talk about the exuberans and tomentosa. Now that's a tomentosa there on the right in my hand, and there's some fun stuff going on in it. That is a June 22nd photo, and that was taken in Colorado. And that's a tomentosa. You can tell by the many of the features on it, the dark stipe with the little kind of fur on it, among other things. It's a black mushroom to begin with. But what's also interesting here, you see in Colorado about mid-season, is you see the white webs on that, and we're getting what are those things called that come from the cottonwoods? They have a special name. The fluffy, sorry, aspen. The white fluff that comes from the aspen that is like that blows around the woods. It collects on the mushrooms. Is I think what you're seeing there. Catkins. Thank you, Kristen. Those are aspen catkins. Um, which are kind of annoying when you're picking and you're picking in the week after the kind of aspen catkins have flown and stuck to all the morels, and you're kind of getting them all that fuzz off of them. But when you take them home and dry them out and cook with them, you don't really notice them again, which is nice, but still annoying. But those are catkins from June 22nd in Colorado. Yeah, I get Eastern and Western, or I say Eastern and Western wrong a lot. I don't know what the word for that is. I say one and I'm thinking the other, so I apologize if I got a little mixed up on that. And I mixed Colorado and Oregon. Oh, whoops. Yeah, I'm definitely mixed up. So let's look at this exuberans here first. Now, this burn species is interesting because it does have a very wide range. It's found in many places around the world. When we find the burn morels in the eastern burns, which are rare but being found, and more so as people look for them and recognize them and DNA test them, it's these exuberants. They're fun because the first mushrooms that come up, the exemias and sextullatas, we call conicas often, they're very light and airy, and when you fill your bag with them, they don't weigh as much. Where these guys, they're heavier, they've got the kind of double foot, and they're just a kind of a beefier mushroom. Um, that come up, and they're also often called pickles. I think you see a hint of kind of green, kind of inside the pores of those ones. They're still hard to always call out if you can't see this kind of thick, convoluted foot here. Let me pop to the next picture and show you a couple here that, like the one on the left, feels totally like an exuberance to me with that convoluted, twisted, folded up foot, and so is the one on the right. However, if somebody said no, that's something different, I wouldn't argue with them. I'd want to see what the DNA said. But this is one of the two big late season mushrooms that we're finding now. This tomentosa right here. These are tomentosa. These are, I think, the jewels. They're number one, they're big. They're very heavy and dense and meaty. They cook up. Not that I eat morels. I'm allergic to them, but I have tasted a lot of them, and these are just meaty and thick and really wonderful to work with. And we prize these probably above all others. And this tomentosa, or also called a fuzzy foot or a blackfoot, they have different names. It really likes the warmer soil temperatures. So um, it's going to come up as the soil temperature comes up. It's going to be one of the fruitings that happen along with the exuberance, which I think the exuberance will happen before and after the tomentosa. I think it has a kind of a wide range of fruiting, but it is one of the late fruiters. So, yeah, Don mentions you've never found maggots in them. I never have either. I think after you pick them for anything can happen 3 days later. But no, we've rarely found any maggots in burn morels at all. They're pretty rare. Now, the exuberants are the ones that have the reputation of being maggoty. In particular, I think there's something about them that is unique that they tend to have more. They're going to be the ones that have those maggots in them. I think if you're gonna find them that way. The word is with commercial pickers, I've heard that a lot of the commercial buyers don't like the exuberance as much because they do tend to get buggy after they buy them. The bugs fruit out and ruin the mushrooms. But not the tomentosa. Um, the tomentosa though likes the warmer soil. Tomentosa means fuzzy or hairy, and if you look in closely at these, you're going to see here I have like a close up. I just took this with my iPhone, but you can see on the top and bottom, you can see all the little hairs that are on the ridges of this mushroom. They're also fuzzy on the stipe, and they go from like a black, often on the right is a real classic beauty tomentosa. But on the left, look how blonde these little guys are. And I'm pretty sure these are tomentosa too, but I could be wrong. But DNA is the ultimate test. But they've got that same fur growing on the outside of them. And maybe people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Feel free to leave a comment if you think I'm getting the species wrong on these. I am not proud about, or I'm happy to be wrong when it comes to picking out species. However, all of these pictures were all taken in the second half of the season or later. This one on the right, just let me tell you, since I'm doing that, let me go back. Uh, this picture on the left was taken June 10th. That's the earliest picture we have here, I think. Um, this picture here was taken July 10th in Montana. Um, and this picture here was the one on the right. I think all these were taken in Montana on that same trip. That's a July 9th in Montana, a big kind of dirty tomentosa. Um, Um, let's see, what do we got here? I didn't get a date on these. They might have been earlier. They were here just to show you the diversity in these mushrooms. The colors can just be dynamically different, and make it a challenge to confidently ID these mushrooms. I'm always a little amazed at how confident people are. Like, oh, that's a so and so, and I'm not always positive about that. Okay, so let's keep looking here. We're kind of through the little intro. I'm not going to go through everything about burn morels like on some of these webinars. I want to cut to the quick now, and we talked about the late season and why we love it. Um, um, this picture was taken in August. I want to say August 11th. Pretty close to that. Yeah, and those are big, aren't they? That's a big table, by the way. That's not a little table. That's a full size, like family table that, you know, sits six very comfortably. And those are big mushrooms. And what's I think interesting to me about these two are they're in August, but I think a lot of these are those earlier species I didn't cover. This was at a pretty high elevation, and it was a late spring, and we had this weird cold weather, and I think we were still getting cold mushrooms. And then it quickly went into these other mushrooms I just spoke about. So as I look at those, I look and go, gosh, I don't think those are exuberants or they're not tomentosa. There might be a couple exuberants mixed in there, but still, they're beautiful mushrooms that just goes to show that as you go up in elevation, those earlier mushrooms can still be found later in the season. So I didn't want to make it sound like you're never going to see those again. That's why I wanted to be sure to include this picture. So let me see. Let me pop over now into the GeoForager map and talk a little bit about how we're going to kind of nail these locations now this time of year and some of the factors that will affect us. Okay, so yeah, Kristen put in the chat that pile was 3 pickers, 3 hours, and I think we just ran out of bags. We couldn't pick anymore, so there could have been a lot more. It was just kneel down and pick them as fast as you can. It was pretty awesome. So here's a satellite view of the West. And when we talk about late season morels, I think there's two totally overriding factors over everything else that are going to matter more than anything else. Number one is going to be elevation. Um, the reason those states that I mentioned have good late season morels are they tend to have good high elevations, um, and the elevations bring a couple of important factors, which I'll talk in just a second. But the second item is going to be precipitation, moisture, rain, snowpack, snow melt, holding moisture, things like that. Um, one of the things that kills the late season morel in a lot of these states now is they just dry up. There's so much dry weather, and it really kind of ends the flushes. So still, you need some good moisture. Now, the higher elevation, you got to think about it too. Is if you're up above, say, 6,000 in Idaho, might be the place where you'd start mid-season, or maybe 9,000 in Colorado feet. Those high elevations, they hold snow melt much longer, so they only melted 4 weeks ago or something. I don't know, 6 weeks ago. Um, and they held the snow melt. And if there was snow melt above them, there was a lot of cold water trickling downhill through there. And their high elevation. So already all of May and June, they're experiencing colder nights and cooler days. If they're north facing, they're getting a lot less sun than other areas. If there's trees above them, they're in the shade. So these high elevation areas. Right now, we're sitting in Oregon. We're at sea level, but if you go up to 4,500 feet somewhere in Oregon, you're gonna be like, oh my God, it is way too dry to find mushrooms here right now. But if you go up to 6,000 feet, you're gonna be like, oh, there's like snow melt up above me, and the ground has these wet spots, and and it's holding more water just because of the lack of the sun and the cool nights and the cooler days and the northern exposures in at least a good part of that space. So higher elevations are a bit immune to some of the dry weather that we're kind of noticing everywhere else in the West. The other thing that mitigates the dry weather we've had is any place that had snowpack on it, 3 weeks ago, didn't experience dry weather. For that spot, it's only just getting dry now. Um, it hasn't dried out thoroughly like it has at 4,500 feet in Oregon or maybe 8,000 feet in Colorado, although Colorado's gotten a lot of rain recently. So how far below snowbanks would you generally look? Austin asks. Well, here's the deal. I'm going to guess you're going to be looking 1,000 feet below snowbanks, 4 weeks below after snowmelt is when I'm going to guess the burn morels come in. Like the naturals might be 2 to 3 weeks. Burn morels might be 4 weeks, 5 weeks after snowmelt. It all depends on a lot of factors. But that's like the first couple flushes, which we're not talking about. These late seasons, so they're gonna start popping at let's say 50 degrees soil temperature. Now, soil temperature is a whole other thing, like how erratic the different measurements are. How do you hang your hat on that? But all things being equal, if you get these early flushes coming out at 50, it's not until the temperature gets up, closer to 60 when these later flushes are going to hit too. So when you talk about how far below snowmelt, I think if you say the first flushes come out 4 weeks, the second flushes come out 6 to 8 weeks. So you might be looking at where the snow melted 60 days ago for a burn morel to pop, one of these late season species to be really flushing, I should say. Now, I'm just guessing. So that's please understand that's an estimate, and there's a lot of factors that can increase or decrease those time spans of when they happen. I got a little off track here, Austin. That was a good question. So the elevation is super important and how that mitigates the rainfall being the second one. And if we don't get rain, a lot of these mushrooms aren't going to do much. You can get into what they call the microclimates. A lot of people, when you say, oh, it hasn't rained much, there's not many mushrooms, and people are like, I'm finding them in these microclimates. Careful in my mind, that is also a code word for, oh, there's not very many out there, and you got to work really hard and find just one special spot, and you're going to get a few pounds, which, can be fun. But I'm looking to fill my bucket. I'm looking to go out when they're everywhere generally. So I don't want to be hunting around for just the perfect microclimate where they might be because 95% of the landscape is dry. So, and I fear we're getting there in a lot of places in the West right now. We're gonna study that up in a second. So we're going to use the maps to really focus a lot on these two issues. So I'm going to assume you have our maps and you understand them. I'm not going to make this how to use a GeoForager. I'm going to pop through some of the overlays I want to look at. I'm going to just real quick. I'm just going to go to Street View because it makes a simpler background right now to load a couple things up. Now, if you haven't been in here in a day or two, there's a new area called favorites, and you can take anything down here and put it in your favorites so you don't have to click as deep in here to find them. So that's a time saver. But what we've got to do is we've got to turn on 2024 wildfires. I have Oregon A fires set as my default. Okay. And I'm going to focus a lot on Oregon because I live here, but I'll look at other states too. And what you've got to do is you've got to study the elevation ranges on these and find the right one. So, for instance, if you come up to this fire up here where which we were visiting a few weeks ago, I got to zoom in a little bit more. Um, um, we're still waiting for things to load on that. You're going to find like this part of Oregon it's just too low. Most of your big elevation gains are going to be down here on this edge of the Cascades, and that's why some of the best late season hunting is going to be there. Now, if you can find another higher elevation area, that's great too. What I want to do is real quick then leave this one, and I want to pop into precipitation and just show you the snow depth map, which, if you'd have looked at a month ago, you'd have more of a sense like, oh, where might I want to be right now? And I tend to look at this like once a week, but you can see as you zoom in here, you've got these two fires that still have snowpack up on the upper edges of them. This fire right here is awesome. The 208 MF fire is really quite nice. And has high elevation. We'll study that one in a little bit. But there's more as you go down here. This is a cool fire right here with a little bit of snow on the edge. down here further in Crater Lake National Park, there's a really nice burn, but it's in the park, so you can't go into it. But if you ever like, oh, I want to walk through and see a field of mushrooms, this might be the place to go if you just want to be a tourist and take some pictures and see some cool mushrooms on the northern part of Crater Lake. And this is all, I think, above 6,000 feet and only just lost its snow. So it could be a fun place to go. And just don't pick any there. You will get in so much trouble. I'm not encouraging you to pick by any means. I'm discouraging you. Don't do it. But visit it if you want to be a mushroom tourist. Okay, so let me see here. Whoops. Start again there. So when sorry, I got to start that again. I'm going to turn on we're in Oregon. And we're looking at elevation. And what I've done in these fires is I've provided here, now that worked, I've provided for you the elevation range in here, and I've talked a little bit about the elevation. So you can read about them if you want. Maybe you know your areas, so you know the high elevation areas. But you can also create screens to find these using our elevation finder tool. So I use this tool a lot. It's a topography tool, elevation range focus. And what that allows you to do is pick an elevation range. Since I'm in Oregon, maybe I'll say I want to pick anywhere from, I want to pick above 5,000. No, I want to pick above 5,500 feet. And I don't want to go above 7,000. Not, you probably would. There's not a lot of that out there. And I'm going to apply that. And what it does is it grays out everything outside that range so you can go, oh, right, here's a strip of that high elevation. This is where I'm going to want to go this week if I can. Here's a bunch more in there. There's quite a bit of high elevation land in that burn, whatever it is. And you can click in and investigate. That's the Falls Fire, which has quite a bit of land above 5,500, however, not above 63. So it doesn't get to quite the really high elevations I want to get at. Now we were at the Falls Fire. Kristen, was it 3 weekends ago, maybe? And it was fruiting pretty well. There were, a lot of the first flushes coming up. So that's a good example of maybe right now, that's where you might want to start looking for some of those tomentosa and exuberance would be in areas like that. Now the tomentosa, just to step back to that concept, it loves the firs, in my opinion. I think it loves Engelmann spruce. I think it likes subalpine fir, and I think it likes ponderosa pine. I think if you can get any of those three trees in good density, I think you're going to find the tomentosa. Now, there might be some other trees. There might be some other firs like grand fir or white fir. And there might be some other spruces like blue spruce. But those are the trees where I've found the most of them, those three trees in pretty big flushes potentially. Yeah, can I repeat those, Laura? That's the ponderosa pine. Uh, that's not what I said. Excuse me, the lodgepole pine, not the ponderosa. Um, the Engelmann spruce, which is probably my favorite tree for a lot of mushrooms, and the subalpine fir are often, I find them in those forests. But I would also say, yeah, there might be blue spruce, there might be white fir floating around in those forests, and also grand fir. Okay. Okay. So you can use this elevation range finder, by the way, is super handy for any time you're like, if you want to find low elevations, you can use it that way. When we're looking for porcini at a certain elevation, we use it for that. So it's a pretty nice tool to help you hone in and really tune out everything that's not kind of at hand right now. Here's this fire I like right now, this 208 MF fire. Now, if you zoom in on this and you take a look at, say, the aspect visualizer. So I'm just going to turn this on now, and that's gonna load on top of this. So, oh, we lost it. But if you just turn this back on and off, the last thing you loaded covers the thing behind it. So now I can see, and I don't like this, right? I'm going to just flip it over and look at this. This whole side here, there's a mountain up here. This whole side is southwest. That's why you've got all these kind of purple hues. But every time there's a a creek that runs down that. There's a north and a south face. So you are going to get up here and you're going to find some, yellows, northwest, a lot of northwest in there. So I would probably focus on these yellow stripes heading up here, or look at this ridge line where there's this hard south facing slope and it gets up to this super high elevation up here, which is over 6,000 feet on this ridge line, this whole line, which by the way, there's a road there, and it falls over onto the north side, north facing. So you've got a lot of cool terrain up here for late season morels. And if you're watching this webinar, I hope you'll be like, oh, that's a pretty big tip. I think it's a big tip. This is going to be the place that I want to go in a few days and check out, and hopefully it's not too dry. But if I come back and turn on, and I'm about to overload you, I know there's so many there's so many tools here. If I come back and turn on, it's not a favorite. I should have made it a favorite. Precipitation, and turn on snow depth, you're gonna see. Look at the snow that's still up here. Now that's not a lot of snow. That's very light snow. That's pockets of snow. It looks like a dark color, but it doesn't represent very much snow. So there's not a ton of snow up here, I don't think, but there might be 6 feet. But there's a lot of places that doesn't have snow, so I'm going to focus on these right when I get up there. All right, so let me turn that off. I'm in map overload right now. I'm going to back out of that. I'm going to come back to the topo tools, and I'm going to turn off the aspect visualizer, which is what I use to find whether something is north, south, east, or west. When it's dry, I care deeply about that. Earlier in the season, I don't care so much. In fact, I may be looking for south because I'm looking for warmer areas. And I'm going to turn off the elevation range focused. I have that in my favorites if I need to come back to it quickly. Let's see what questions we got here that we have. Yeah, those fires in the Umpqua and Willamette are loaded with those high altitude tree species. Yes, they are. And those tree species, by the way, Anton, not just there, they're loaded across Montana, Idaho, I should say, Montana, Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming all have, well, they don't have grand firs, but they have the Engelmann spruce and the subalpine fir and the lodgepoles. So yeah, there's a lot of good territory out there for these mushrooms. Um, so that was elevation. We brought in and looked and added a little snow melt. The other tools that might interest you in here, if you're looking, we have soil moisture, which is kind of fun. And you can see, I think it's interesting how it shows that, like, oh, it's a little overwhelming. So I'm gonna just do that and enable the opacity tool. And what you can see if I turn it up a little bit is blue is pretty dry, right? Until you get into like light green and yellow, you get a lot more moisture, and you can see these fires that we were just in. We're going to zoom back in here. Here's that fire. There's a lot up in here is pretty light green on the top of this fire. There's no blue. So that fire is going to be fundamentally different than this fire in terms of how much moisture it's holding. And that's because it looks like this partly because as you go as you go east out of the Cascades, it gets pretty dry, until you hit the next mountain range. As you go east and as you go south, look how dry it is down in California. When you look at the west side of the Cascades, they're much wetter. They're also, the hillsides are much steeper from all the water running through them. The Morels, we were picking exuberance on the western slope of the Cascades. I want to say 4 weeks ago. We were finding them like at a higher elevation for the western slope of the Cascades. Like it's kind of done there. Spring has moved past. The soil's warmed up, but the Morels, they love these dry zones. Places that turn blue as they turn blue, Morels for some reason really love these areas. So we want to get in there when they're still a little yellow though. So use this to find those. The other thing I like to watch this time of year, especially if you're like me, I'm willing to travel for some Morels. Look, I got to tell you, I think these are like vacations. If Kristen and I can get in the camper and get the dogs and go for 3, 4, 5 days, then we can you can get into the heart of Idaho from Oregon with 1 day's travel, which opens up a lot of territory. And if you're willing to stay on highways, you can really get pretty deep into Montana, Um, it's about a little longer to get down here into these mountains in Utah. But what that means is, what you might want to do is don't decide where to go right now, but watch the precipitation. Okay, wait a minute. This is going to be too much map right here. So I did too much again. Let me just back off. Let me turn off the soil moisture. Sorry, that's under soil, where we also have soil temperature, which is interesting to track temperatures of soils because um, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Moisture is what is this, the 7 day I turned on? So this is where it's rained in the last 7 days and how much it's rained. I'll come out a little bit more. And you can see like Colorado's gotten a fair bit of rain. Wyoming has really gotten a lot of rain, and so has the kind of middle to eastern half of Montana. And if you want to know any of these, you can just come in and you can, click on, let's click on that. It looks like a real hot spot. It's going to take a minute. There it is. Last 7 days. There goes almost an inch and a half there in the last 7 days, and it will show you each day. And you can kind of say, okay, that's important. How did we do 2 weeks ago? If you want to know how that affected you. And what, we're seeing is there was some rain that came through Oregon 2 weeks ago. But a lot of places haven't gotten rain, so they're starting to dry out a lot. So I like to use this because most of your kind of modern weather reports, they're so busy telling you what's going to happen in the next 10 days or what's happening right now that as a morel hunter, I care about the weather for the last 30 days. I feel like any morel that fruits today has gotten the conditions it needs for the last 30 days. And if you have no rain between snowpack melt and when the morel should fruit, they rarely do well. So we need one good rain in there between these two events, in my opinion. Especially out here in the West where things dry up. Now, again, as you go up in higher in elevation, it gets more forgiving. As you get north facing, it gets more forgiving. Um, Let's see, Paul, where are we on the map right now? Let's see. Oh, goodness, some questions. I'm not staying up. Where are we on the map right now? Where are we? I see this button right here that tells you where you are. I'm going to click it. I'm right here. And when you're in the field on your app, you can click that button and you can move through your fire or move wherever you're moving, just like on a conventional map. So I don't know if that answers your question, Ray. Paul, do you have any tips on the Boise fire in Northern California? No, I don't. I might have to check it out, but I don't think, if memory serves, it's high enough elevation. But hang on to that thought. Let me look at that after I do a few more generics, and I'll come back and we'll look at the Boise fire. I may need you to remind me then. How much rain do you look for a solid flush of morels? An inch a week is plenty for a good morel flush. I think a big thunderstorm with 3 inches will absolutely make them go bonkers. So I would prefer a major thunderstorm to roll through and dump, a gully gusher, which will typically drop the temperature down on the soil for a couple of days. The big rain will slow things down, and then a week later it will explode and it will fruit for 2 more weeks with one good big rain. So that's what I love to see. I have a friend that tells me I should track thunderstorms. So I might have to start figuring out how to find where like these really big thunderstorms happen. But that sure looks like one right there to me. Um, and that's the Cow Valley fire, which I don't know anything about. There's an elevation range. I think it's probably a little bit low, but I don't know. I just clicked on it because it was a bright color. So you can track your precipitation this way, or you can also, I said I was going to mention soil moisture is a way to track the season a little more. And you're probably going to be looking, here that comes. So let's just take a quick look. We were looking at this fire over here. So let me zoom out and let me give you the legend. And you can see soil moisture goes, or soil temperature is at green, it's 50, and as it turns into yellow, it's 65. So you're basically looking for that transition to green to yellow is going to be the range for really the whole shebang. And right in here, we're still solidly with a lot of green, which tells me there's still a lot of season left in this area. Now, I think this was the fire I was kind of looking at with you earlier, and you can see a lot in here. And if you click like that on the fire somewhere, it will give you the soil temperature data. And if you look at it, it tells you where I just clicked up in there was 57 degrees is the average soil temperature there today. Now, that temperature fluctuates widely. It was 57 degrees at 11 p.m. on June 17th, not quite today. That was last night, I guess. And then it went through today. It went down as low at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I'm scrolling 5 a.m., 6 a.m. It was 45 degrees. Look at that fluctuation. That's crazy, isn't it? Well, the soil fluctuates, the surface of the soil fluctuates a lot with the weather outside, which is why when people say, well, what's the soil temperature? And you're like, well, did you do it in the morning or the afternoon? Like it's a big difference. And how far down in the ground did you stick your probe? And were you on a north facing or south facing or flat? There's so many factors that just kind of saying, here's the soil temp is tough. That's why I do tend to rely on this average soil temp on a computer to really kind of hone in on that. Frankly, at the end of the day, probably looking at places with your eyeballs and seeing how far spring is along and trying to evaluate how tall the grass are and what do the trilliums look like and what are the other things growing around it. Ultimately, you get a better sense, but you have to go there to do that. Like I can't tell you about this fire without putting my eyeballs on it. So this is a nice tool to help you approximate. And I think the fact that it gives you a daily average might make it indeed more accurate than sticking a thermometer in the soil. Okay, let's see. What was the average temperature we say was ideal for looking at Austin? I think usually when it hits an average of 50, right about then is when the flushes start. There's other factors, but just roughly speaking, 50 degrees is when we see it happening, and I think up to 60. Now, it might be like 49 or 48, but that's about the temperature we're looking at, which on here fluctuates from green to yellow on this one. Okay. All right. Let's just zoom out of this one. And I'm going to turn off soil temperature. And then the other kind of handy thing in here, if you're looking, although I think at this point, since you're chasing elevations and precipitation, you may want to look into some more tree information. Now, the trees will, let me just zoom in. You can get a forest type, which is just a kind of a raw bit of data. And it's kind of interesting on this fire. I think this fire really illustrates it well. The western lower elevation part of this fire right here is dominated by Douglas fir. It's a Doug fir forest, I guess is what you would call it, is the Doug firs kind of spill over the crest of the Cascades as the kind of dominating tree. That's this Doug fir group. Now, there's a lot of other trees in there. As we know, there's trees that we love to find mushrooms with, like white fir and nuts, cedar. I was going to say cypress. Cedar trees are great for these mushrooms. However, as you enter this area, the kind of type of forest transitions into what is classified as a fir spruce, which is my favorite, especially for a high elevation. I feel like the fir spruce fire has the tomentosa, especially. Now, the exuberants are over with the Doug firs and the cedars as well. But the tomentosa is not so much. You'll find some, but not near as many as you get once you enter into these kind of pinkish area. So I really like that this fire's got these two types of forest in it. Tells me there's a lot of different habitat. It tells me that it's really going to be a fire worth exploring. And there's plenty of fires like this. I mean, look, here's one that has both those in it too. Um, so that's your forest type. You can dive deeper. And if you want to see, like, you might be like, oh, well, I want to look for Engelmann spruce. You can do that. And this is the purple. I lost where I was. Oh, there's a lot of Engelmann spruce in here. And down in here with this heavy coverage, there's even some real heavy duty Engelmann spruce as well in places. So, it does exist in there as well. And you can see this map as I'm going to zoom out. You can see the Engelmann spruce map right here really matches the forest across the west. It's a common tree. Down here in Colorado, though, it's a very important tree and very thick forests of it. And that's where we've also had really good luck burn morel hunting are in these forests. You have them also over here in Utah. And Utah has a pretty nice high elevation fire right here. Um, this fire goes from 6,500 to 11,300, which could just be stellar. But I bet you this could produce just so many mushrooms if they get the rain this summer, if they get some monsoons. And the fact that it goes to 11,000, that tells me you could be in here easily the first week of September if there's rain, finding morels. So that's a really high elevation zone for a Rocky Mountain fire to still also have, like, the tree line is getting pretty close to that too. Trillium. Can you say more about where they're at in maturity as a good indicator? No, Ray, I might defer and see if Kristen can speak to that. I'm not so good with the trillium. I just know that I see them. The indicators are pretty tricky. I guess, by the way, Ray, you just sent that to me, not to everyone. So if you send it to everyone, Kristen can also get in there and try to answer it. On the quick, Kristen, the question is, Trillium, can we talk about where they are at in maturity as a good indicator? Um, uh, I think we see out here in Oregon. Did you say, Ray, what state are you in? Oh, Krista, thank you. In Idaho, it's when they go from white to pink is about the right time. And you're in Oregon. I know. Are you which part of Oregon? I know we often see those little cups, those little orange cups, and those big bigger cups that are in the fires, kind of immediately preceding the first flush. So when we go in and see a lot of cups, um, but we don't see a lot of morels, we know we're just like a week early. Um, you're in Portland, okay. Um, I'm trying to think how else to describe the other indicators. The calypso orchids and arnica is blooming, especially for those kind of mid to late season. I would say I don't know if does the arnica bloom, Kristen, before it blooms after that first flush, I feel like. And by the time it's blooming pretty well, you're into tomentosa season. Um, Oh, Krista, good. You got in on that too. Arnica is kind of everywhere across the West. Good. Thank you for helping answer that question. Krista, you just sent that to me, Arnica at the two-leaf stage. Send that to everybody. Um, and the Arnica was blooming full on 4 weeks ago in the burn we were in picking. So there you go. And that burn 4 weeks ago, Kristen, was at the one in the Eastern Cascades where we were picking a lot of exuberance at the lower elevation. Oh no, that was the one that was west of that where we were picking the Falls fire in kind of Eastern Oregon and the Eastern Oregon fires. Do morels grow in pumice soils? I don't know. I don't know a lot about the soil composition that I could say they love or don't love. I would say that if those trees grow there that we're talking about, then I think you will find those mushrooms there, would be my opinion that that people do talk a lot about soil, but I feel like it's usually the trees that make the bigger difference than the soil type when it comes to burn morels, particularly. Um, but I assume those pumice soils are those kind of lava soils that you see around uh, um, Crater Lake. I assume is where that is, and maybe where the Matsutake are. And there's definitely morels all around that zone. All right, so we looked at the trees. You got a lot of trees. You can dial up and down if you want to kind of tree hunt and find the right kind of trees for whatever you're looking for. And by the way, this is way beyond burn morels. Like we have a lot of deciduous trees in here. We have hemlocks. You know, we have people looking for all kinds of different mushrooms with the tree map. So if you have any trees that you want to see added to our tree maps, let me know. Last night we had a request for the a cypress tree added um, to the list. So if you do want to see a different tree in there as a user of the system, you can request it and we will add it. All right, so we're getting near the end. I'm kind of wandering here. I think that's going to be it. Now, if we do want to look, uh, I don't think we do. I think that's it for kind of dialing in on the mid to late season. So let me pop back and kind of just talk about a few other big picture issues that I think we should just run through before we wrap here in just a few minutes. Um, you need permits. And a lot of these Forest Service areas, I think, this year the Forest Service is a little too busy to deal with mushroom pickers, and I haven't heard that they really care or check permits this year, but it's an unusual year. I think this picture was taken in the Crater Lake National Park, where no permit will allow you to pick. And look at the date. These were seized the weekend of July 4th, which is coming up a few weeks from now. And this burn where these were found was right next to that burn I showed you a few minutes ago that's in Crater Lake, almost like contiguous to it. Um, in the exact same zone. So that's what people are going to be finding in that fire I just showed you. You know, hopefully they won't pick it, but clearly some people did this weekend and they seized 234 pounds, 9, that was 9 years ago. I think that was like our second or third year picking. We were there for that, and we looked at that burn actually because it just came out of the national park. But we were there in real early June, and it was clear it wasn't ready. It was still like right after the snow melted. So, but we did look at it, and these are the proof that it came out. By the way, nobody knows what they did with all these mushrooms that they took. You do need permits on all federal land to pick. And if you don't need a permit, it's because you've read the rules and it tells you you don't need a permit. Um, and I will say that every forest has its own rules. So anybody that can tell you the rules that apply to you without asking what forest are you picking in is incorrect. Maybe they're lucky, but they're incorrect. Every forest has its own permits and its own rule system around picking mushrooms and picking morels. So you do have to look it up. Okay. Safety wise, there's a big danger with hidden holes. I think that's a common injury. Tree roots burn out from under the ground. People are walking around looking at mushrooms, and boom, they fall into a hole and they break an ankle. So watch out for holes. I think the real life risk in these fires, which you need to avoid, is rain. Between flash floods, which are dangerous, and washed out roads. The other thing is after a big rain, do not go into a burn. Um, the mud and the ash is really hyper slippery and dangerous, and you don't want to be on any kind of terrain, and you'll be falling down a lot and slipping down the hill and can get hurt. So give it a couple days to dry out after a really big rain. And you don't want to pick after a big rain anyways. Wind is bad news because you're in dead trees around you. You don't want them to blow down and land on you. Okay, Paul. Oh, good. Paul Lufkin. No, 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 no. Good. I'm glad you asked, Paul. We're not going to eat any uncooked morels. They will kill you, literally, a raw morel. Um, but once you cook them, they're good to go. These are not morels. I just want to make sure you should be looking at this and go, oh yeah, those are not morels. Um, You don't want to pick something if it's not a bird morel. So just, make sure you know what a morel is and what a morel isn't. The two lookalikes are going to be the Verpa bohemica, I think is what it's called, for instance, or the Gyrometra, and it has several different species that can occur. David asked about fire retardant poisoning morels. That is a hot topic, David. Hot. Um, I have said for several years now that I don't think they do, that uh, fire retardant spray is simply fertilizer. Don't get your head wrapped around it. It's bad for the fish in the river because algae grow where it's dropped, but the fertilizer gets washed out with the rain and into the dirt, and morels decompose things. Yes, they'll consume nitrogen and do whatever they do with it, and they'll consume a lot of stuff. I've been saying that a long time, well, a couple years. Yeah, Kristen put it in. I did a deep dive into the research. I thought people like, because it was red, seemed to set people off, as though that was what killed you or somehow made you sick. And clearly, if your tomato garden has been sprayed with fire retardant, don't eat the tomato. It's on there's fire retardant on it. But morels are growing out of soil that had something sprayed on it last year, and then it had 8 feet of snow fall on it and rain before and after, probably. It's fertilizer. Big breath. There's been some research that came out since I wrote that article, and I linked to it in the bottom of that article because I need to revise it. And the research, here's the killer. The companies that are making the fire retardant have been allowing heavy metal into it, which is not, it should not be. They should not be spraying heavy metal along with the fertilizer. And when you're talking about arsenic and lead and crap like that, the mushrooms will uptake heavy metal and store it in there. So if you do, that there are some new cases. I think there's some court cases. It's pretty hot off the press, like maybe a couple weeks old, that they found through this study that the fire retardant companies were their product was dirty. It wasn't what it was supposed to be. So it's not the fire retardant that's bad. It's the companies that were putting stuff in it that shouldn't have been in it in the first place, i.e., heavy metals. And all mushrooms, well, I don't know if all, many edible mushrooms will uptake heavy metals. And if you eat that, it's very bad for you, with well-researched examples coming out of morels growing in old apple orchards, which were sprayed with herbicides and pesticides that contained heavy metal, have given people cancer, totally proven. Porcini picked on the side of the road in Eastern Europe where all these cars driving around leaded gas, especially the porcini that grow there. And there's another one too, in agaricus, I think. Are uptaking heavy metals, and then you eat those, just like mercury in a fish. It's lead or arsenic in a mushroom. So yeah, that could be bad news with the fire retardant. Sorry to go off on a tangent. Oh, I know, it's so disappointing. Okay. By the way, if you want to avoid the fire retardant, by the way, number one is pick near streams. They're not allowed to spray near a stream. That's against their rules of engagement. Not that they don't ever make mistakes, but there's a boundary. If you're near moving water, you probably wasn't sprayed there. Number two is they usually spray the fire lines with it. They don't spray the heart of the fire. So if you really want to be safe, don't pick along the edge of the fire where they're doing back burns into the fire, because they do those back burns, then they spray it with retardant, and that's how they fight the fire. So you want to avoid those areas right along the roads, because they don't spray the whole fire with it. They spray very select areas to either protect buildings, protect a firefighter in danger, or create a fire break where they're really actively fighting the fire. And there's usually a sign of that because they've bulldozed trees, they've cut them down, they've chipped them, they've moved them around. There's usually signs of that. Okay, off topic, right? Off topic. Mike, that would be cool. I would not be surprised if that was not available in the future. What I do think I can add, Mike, I think I can get a map, a digital map that shows where they're not allowed to spray, which is everywhere near moving water. But I think I could get that because that map does exist in the federal repository that I found recently amongst my research. So I will endeavor for next season to get a little more fire retardant information in there. Hey, here's a quick etiquette blast. I mean, not that you need to hear this. Here's my etiquette advice for you, man. Share those mushrooms. Find a bunch, give them away, delight other people with them, take them hunting with you. My God, these are burns. They're going to be gone next year. Tell people where you're going. Tell them where you went. Share the information. Who cares? Yeah, no commercial pickers may come in and, there's a lot, but I think burn morels can be treated a little differently than other things, and we can share them and have fun with them, and there's plenty to go around. And my gosh, people are having a bad day because they only picked 5 pounds when they went in the fire. Oh, who cares? Um, so yeah, share the wealth, share the abundance. Pick up trash while you're out there too. That's pretty cool when people do that. All right. Good. Robert's here. We're just wrapping up. Sorry you missed it, Robert. Uh, you could have jumped in and helped a lot with the species identifications that I had trouble with earlier. Hey, here's another slide that I always show at the end of these. Some favorite things. I think walkie-talkies are important safety devices. You will love that you brought wet wipes and hand lotion with you after you've been handling hundreds or thousands of morels. I think a chainsaw is a very nice safety device to have in the back of your vehicle. We had to pull ours out on our last trip out to eastern Colorado not too long ago and out of the truck because we were driving down a road that needed a tree removed. So bring lots of bags. When you get into these, you can get crazy big amounts. Do not be the person that shows up with one bag to realize there's 4 bags more to be picked before you go back to the vehicle. Here's why you need those hand wipes. Um, and you get pretty dirty in the woods. Wear your dirty clothes. Here we are with a stack of mushrooms. You got to figure out how to deal with them. Looks like I'm wearing the same hat, doesn't it? And yeah, there's that hat again. This must be my mushroom hat. Hey, we'll see you out there. I think we're gonna actually head out to a fire on Sunday. No, yeah, Sunday. We're gonna go out and maybe visit one of those fires I was just talking about that I wanted to visit so much. So if there's no more questions, I'm gonna wrap here. Um, yep, here we go. So thanks everybody. Great luck out there, and I hope you'll report back and tell us what you found. Bye bye.